What's going on, everybody? Curtis Wilkerson with HawgSports.com coming to you today with another episode of Hog Hoops Live. The Razorbacks are 9-0, two more dubs since the last show. They keep stacking wins, but people keep approaching with caution, it seems like. Interesting. We're going to talk about last night's win over Charlotte. We're going to preview what's a really huge opportunity for Arkansas against Oklahoma this weekend. We're going to dive into those net rankings that has everybody a little bit frazzled right now. All that and more coming your way on Hog Hoops Live. All right, as always, I want to remind you guys of all the ways to watch or listen. You can join us on Facebook Live. Make sure to give us a follow there. Also available on YouTube. Be sure to hop on, subscribe to our YouTube page, hit that notification bell. Remember, Hog Hoops Live has its own YouTube page, so separate from what we have with Hog Sports Live. If you're into the podcast thing, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, you can find the show right where you find Hog Sports Live every week. Also, if you're not following us or subscribed with us at Hog Sports, you really need to get on that. I mean, listen, basketball is in full swing. Danny's killing it with football recruiting coverage. We've got early signing period starting next week. It's transfer portal season. It's exciting stuff. We got all the bowl game coverage coming up, which, by the way, Trey's going to be in Tampa, I think, the entire week leading up to the Outback Bowl against Penn State. Not a bad place to be. Late December, early January. Tampa. The question is Trey going to send me to Tampa in March for the SEC basketball tournament? That's the real question, I think. Time will tell. If you got questions, comments, thoughts, any of that about the basketball team, throw them into the chat. Remember, I'll always double back and get to those towards the end like always. But let's start by talking about this Charlotte game. Really, I think there's a lot to unpack. Another game, kind of another double-digit win for this Arkansas team. Look, say what you want about the eye test and consistency and all that, but the Hogs are 9-0, right? And look, there are some things to work on, and I'm not going to hesitate to talk about them today, but my goodness, if I didn't know any better based on, some of the panic that I've I've heard over the last few days, I think Arkansas was the team who's lost to Iona or Texas Southern or Kansas City or Liberty or Coastal Carolina. I could keep going, but no, that's the rest of the SEC. Arkansas is still undefeated. Little perspective there. Last night was a 20-point win, 86-66 over a Charlotte team that I think is better than most of the groups who've come into Bud Walton Arena this season, certainly better than any team Arkansas has faced since they left Kansas City. It's a pretty talented group. It wasn't a breakout performance or anything overwhelming, but I do feel Arkansas was just pretty solid overall. Yeah, I think I grade them as a B overall in the post-game report card. Some back and forth early. I think it was about 14-14 midway through the first half. Hey, Arkansas put a 17-4 run on them, wound up taking a 41-31 lead into halftime. It was kind of interesting if you looked at the stats. Arkansas only shot 28% from three in the first half, 62% on free throws. That's not very good. Struggled to make some shots there at times. So how did they get the 10-point lead? Well, they forced twice as many turnovers as they committed, and they absolutely dominated the glass. So an 11-0 half on the offensive boards meant Arkansas was 14-0 on second chance points. That's your difference right there. The Hogs took 13 more shot attempts than Charlotte in the first half, and that was a key. They came out of the break and had what I really believe was probably the best offensive stretch of the year. Started 7-7 from the field. 5 of those shots were assisted on. The ball was moving. Guys were stepping into jumpers, knocking them down with confidence. That was good to see. I thought that was a really good stretch coming right out of the break. Built up, I think it was about a 16-point lead. And this is one of the two things, honestly, that drives me nuts about this team, right, is they put it in cruise control at that point. Started getting a little lax and careless offensively. We started seeing just those unforced turnovers that'll drive you nuts sometimes. The shot selection, I thought, dipped a little bit. So they just didn't keep their foot on the gas pedal maybe as much as you'd hope they would. Started losing some focus and intensity on the defensive end of the floor. Charlotte was one of those teams that's going to hit you with a lot of back cuts, back doors, a heavy screening team, and they kind of lost their assignments there for a while, started giving up some easier looks, way easier than they did in the first half. The lead stayed in that 12 to 16 point range for most of the half until Charlotte popped a couple threes in a row, cut it to 9 with just under 6 to play, and forced Muss to take a timeout. Now, if you've been following along, Eric Musselman doesn't like to take timeouts, but he felt like he needed to do that there. I'm sure that was a colorful message that he delivered during that 30 seconds, but it did the job, right? And Arkansas has to stop doing that. I get it. And like Muss said last night, you're not just going to outplay teams for every second of a 40-minute game. But you can step on their throat on occasion when you have them down. And that's kind of the thing we're waiting to see from this Razorback team. They did it against UCA. That's UCA. I want to see them do it against these other teams. How many times this year have they built a double-digit lead and you think, all right, Hogs got this one covered, and then all of a sudden the team's right back in it? So a little more of a sense of urgency in those situations, I think, would definitely benefit them moving forward. But like I said, the timeout did the trick. Hey, Arkansas, they went into their late game offense. I know some people don't like that, the stall ball, but it worked, right? I mean, Arkansas had driving scores from, I think, Note, Likes, and Devo all got to the rim. They strung together some stops. They didn't stay in that stall ball the whole time. It was probably just a few possessions, and then they kind of got out of it. But hey, when they needed to lock it in, they did close the game on a 13-2 run, won by 20 points. So, nice win. I think Charlotte, they challenge teams in unique ways. They really pack it in defensively. They were doubling really hard on every post entry. So essentially, they're trying to keep you away from the basket and off the glass and kind of force you to beat them by knocking down jumpers. And Arkansas hasn't really beaten anybody by knocking down jumpers so far. The good thing is, in this game, the Razorbacks didn't take the bait, and that impressed me. They were selective from three, only 13 attempts, and they only made 3, which is another topic here in a few minutes. But, they knew Charlotte didn't have a lot of shot blockers and rim protectors, so they really attacked the teeth of the defense, forced the issue off the bounce. They kept the ball moving. I think there were fewer periods of that stagnant, ISO ton of one-on-one play. There was less of that, which was good to see. And hey, they got to the rack and they were really efficient. And eventually, some of those shots started falling, especially the mid-range. I'll talk about Devo in a minute, but he started knocking down some of those mid-range jumpers that were just so automatic for him last year. And we've kind of been waiting to see that, and he started hitting those. Jay Will had a nice mid-range pull-up. So some encouraging signs there. Now you just need to extend it out a little bit beyond the arc. And then on the other end with the Charlotte team, I talked about it. They run that Princeton offense, just a lot of back screens, back cuts, handoffs, ball screens, just a lot of action. And, Arkansas has a lot of really good on-ball, like individual defenders, but this really challenged them to play, I think, team defense and become a little bit more connected. And look, they did get lax and burned on back doors. Some of that was a little bit of a lack of focus and rotations at times, but you also have to remember, I know people have been getting upset lately about Arkansas getting beat on cuts, backdoor cuts, and things like that, particularly the guards, but this is a team that has a really high steal rate. And what that means is those guards are going to get a little jumpy sometimes, looking to get aggressive, get out in the passing lane. So on occasion, they're going to get burned on those back doors. The key is to have the right rotations when that happens and have your guys like Jalen Williams, who's a willing charge taker, to step over and kind of right the wrong when that happens. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But a little more awareness there certainly would be beneficial for them. Hogs did a pretty good job of defending the three. Hey, 6 of 24, that's 25% for Charlotte. So Arkansas at the end of the day held them below their season average in points, field goal percentage, and three-point percentage. So good job. A few players of notes here. JD Note, 23 and 10, 9 of 18 from the field. Listen, he was strong to the rim. Was a good finisher in there. I thought he was efficient in the lane. Showed some nice touch on the little runner and floater. Needs to make some threes, 1 of 6, so that slump for him continues. 4 steals. He just continues to be, I think, an incredible on-ball defender, one of the best in the country at this point. I mean, I know he's top 10 in the country in steals, and really accepted the challenge on the glass. You know, he had 1 rebound against Little Rock, and after the game, it was almost like Musselman kind of issued a challenge. He said, hey, we've got to get more on the defensive backboards from this guy. He went out and got you 10, coach, so challenge accepted. I thought he did a really nice job. Jay Will, you know, we go on and on about how valuable Jalen Williams is to this team as a passer and a rebounder and a defender, and he did all those things, but he let everybody know last night that he can score it too if he needs to. He had a career-high 15 points, super efficient, 7 of 9 from the field. I thought he did a great job of being in that dunker spot. Arkansas guards drive it. He's got his hands up and hands ready to catch the pass and finish. Like I said, he knocked down that mid-range. He had 8 rebounds. Here we go again. Get Jalen Williams a double-double. Come on. He got the 15 points, needed 2 more rebounds. Like, JD, come on, man, you're a guard. Did you really need to grab those 2 rebounds? Let the man get his double-double. I joke, but I really want him to get it. Somebody actually asked him after the game, like, Jalen, man, you've been, you know, like a point or two or a rebound or two away from a double-double and a crazy number of times. Does that frustrate you? And you know, he said, nah, I'm just kind of out there playing. He's not that aware of his stats, but you know he wants it. I want it for him. Come on. He also had 3 steals, which I think is really impressive for a center, power forward center. He had 1 that he got in the open floor and took it coast to coast for a dunk. So, really good game for him. Devo, 18 points. You know, he had that mid-range falling, like I said. He set a career high for the 2nd consecutive game. He had 8 assists. He had 7 against Little Rock. He had 8 in this game. Did have 5 turnovers. You know, some of that was guys not being ready to receive the pass, and Musselman noted that afterwards. Like, hey, Devo is a guy that's going to – he plays with a lot of freedom, and admittedly, he needs to rein it in a little bit. He gets a little too flashy at times, tries to do a little too much, and you get some of those head-scratching, unforced turnovers. So, yeah, okay, need to cut down on that a little bit, but it's also what makes him unique and what I think makes him a special playmaker. The guy's got to be ready to receive that pass and finish. So it was a mixture of those. Either way, 5 turnovers is definitely too many. But listen, after the way he started the season, I really think he's turned the corner. And you know, he doesn't need to be Chris Paul, right? I mean, when he's playing with ball-dominant guys like JD and Chris likes, as much as he is, I'm really impressed with the production he's had in the last few games. And if he's getting his assists within the flow of the offense and keeping the ball moving, when we know those two guys, and they're capable of moving the ball as well, and they've been doing a better job of that, but they can also get a little dribble happy and things get clunky and stagnant. But if Devo's facilitating things and keeping that ball moving, and he's racking up the assist numbers, and he's scoring, and he's defending the other team's best guard, I don't know what more you can ask of the kid. So I think he's definitely taking a step forward. There's room to grow in that position, but you got to be happy with where he's at right now. A lot happier than you were maybe, over the Thanksgiving holiday or around that trip to Kansas City. Chris Likes took a step forward defensively. Muss really talked about how he was a menace on the ball. That's good. That's been an area of weakness for him. Hey, Arkansas shut down Jameer Young, the Charlotte guard. This is a guy who came in averaging 20 a game. He's a hooper. If you watched that game and saw him in person, he's a really gifted scorer. Arkansas held him to 10 points on 4 of 14 shooting. And it was a combination of guys. Devo had him. JD guarded him. Likes, it wasn't even his assignment, but he kept matching up with him. And, Muss was like, hey, he's doing a good job, so I'm not going to say anything about it. But those 3 guys really stepped up in that situation. And, that's something that Arkansas really likes to do under Musselman is eliminate the other team's best player. They did that in this game. So, good sign. But aside from those 4 guys, really, that was basically it. And I think we're still waiting for this team to be fully locked in on the same night. And that's one of the issues. It's one of the concerns right now is just consistency. Au'Diese Toney, as good as he's been, he took 1 shot. That's wild. he got to the free throw line twice, and I know they don't run plays for him, but you got to get that guy more than one shot. Stanley Umude, he's kind of had those breakout performances in the last few games. Scoreless. Really? Nothing? 0 of 6. Had a dunk blocked. Only played 10 minutes. You can't have that. You got to have more consistency from these guys who are supposed to be your major producers. And Tony's, I think, was a blip on the radar. He's been phenomenal all year. But we've seen those up and downs with Stanley. Well, you sure would like to have a lot more of that really good Stan than the no-show, because Arkansas is a lot better team when he's playing well. Connor was all right in his time. Charlotte had a 7-footer. He blocked his shot a couple times, had a dunk. And he was 3 of 5 from the field. He only played 8 minutes, though. Good in his role in that limited action. And there wasn't really enough, I don't think, to go off with the other guys. I do those player grades after every game, and a number of other guys played, but there just wasn't enough to evaluate them on. Jackson Robinson, he's been playing about 15 minutes a game. He only played 5. I thought he did some good things in there. He did pull up for a mid-range in transition on the break. If you're going to do that, you better step up and knock that shot down. If you're not going to go to the rim and you're going to pull up in that situation, you better make it, and he did, which was good. Missed his 3-point attempt. I thought he did some okay things defensively, but he was also in there when Charlotte made their little run. So we'll see how his role evolves. Look, it was good to see KK get in there at the end and knock down a 3. I think he's going to have to take advantage of those small opportunities. The last couple games he's gotten in there in those opportunities and hasn't done well. Against in the Little Rock game, he got in and fouled a 3-point shooter. In this game, he got in and made a 3, so that's progress. I think Arkansas needs either Trey Wade or Kamani Johnson to be able to step up and give them, nothing crazy, 8 to 10 minutes a game, especially on those nights where the matchup doesn't favor Connor Vanover. Neither one of those guys have particularly impressed me so far. You'd like them to both be physical. They don't have to score a bunch of points, but you got to be physical in there on the glass, defend, and just keep the ball moving and keep the flow of the offense going. That's all you need from them right now. And if you get anything above that, that's great. That's a win. So both of them have been getting a rotation per game and then haven't really been getting in beyond that. And I think if they were doing the things that were asked of them or the things that were hoped of them, we'd probably see them a little bit more, maybe in the second half. We're getting ready to go into game 10. We're kind of waiting to see if this team can put a full 40 minutes together, and that's part of the process. But as the competition heats up, and it starts this weekend, and you got a couple more non-conference games, and then it gets real in SEC play, you can't afford to have these long lapses and downswings that have plagued them a little bit. You don't want the roller coaster. You want to ride a steady wave. So some improvements can be made, I think, on that end. And part of it is you just have to have a better idea of what you're getting from these guys from night to night. A lot of people have asked me about, what's up with Musselman's subbing patterns and the rotations. What's going on? It's sporadic. Well, I think that's because the play of the guys is sporadic and inconsistent. If you don't know what you're going to get from night to night, it's kind of hard to build a rotation. I think you've got 4 guys right now. JD, J. Will, Aldis. Maybe just 3. But guys who you can, Devo, yeah. So 4. So guys that you can get consistent, kind of know what you're going to get. You feel pretty good about the production. Then outside of that, you don't really know. Like, you don't know if Connor's going to be able to contribute for you until the game starts, and you just see how the matchups play out. We've seen Chris and Stanley be guys who can take over a game, and you've also seen them be guys who, kind of don't show up. And then, we talked about that back end. Musselman's been trying to find, I think, that 8th guy in the rotation. Who's it going to be? Is it Jackson Robinson? Is it Trey Wade? Is it, does KK round into form? I don't know, like here we are mid-December and we're not really sure who that is yet. So again, part of the process, still some things to figure out, but it's time for them to start getting figured out, right? Excuse me. And then the 3-point shooting. Look, 3 of 13 against Charlotte. What are they, about 28% at this point on the year? It's an issue. You know, they're limiting attempts. The shot selection's been better. I've been tracking it every game in terms of where the shots are coming from. Are they open or contested? Are they off the dribble or catch and shoot, which is a better look? It's been better. And you'd like to think that at some point, if they keep taking good shots, that they're going to start to fall. And honestly, it's about time to stop with the labor pains and show us the baby, right? I mean, look, I'll say this. If you're not going to be able to shoot the three consistently, you at least better be able to defend it consistently. Otherwise, I mean, you find yourself trading twos for threes, and we can do the math. You know, teams are already really packing it in and trying to shrink the floor on Arkansas because they're so good in the paint and getting to the rim. The problem is these teams right now aren't talented enough to stop Arkansas from imposing their will, I guess is what I'm saying. And listen, I'm not saying Arkansas won't be able to do that in SEC play. They very well may. I mean, it's a very talented team. There's a reason they came into the season ranked as high as they are in the preseason. The thing is, SEC teams are going to be a lot more talented, so it's going to be a lot more difficult for Arkansas to do the things that they're doing currently to win if they're not knocking down some threes. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy, and I've talked about this. They don't have to knock down 10 to 12 a night. They don't have to shoot 40% from three, but you have to be a threat, enough to be respected, enough to keep teams from shrinking the floor on you. Hopefully, they catch some fire here soon. I mean, and we like to say, hey, listen, JD Notae is a good shooter. We know that, but he's getting into a pretty deep slump here, man. So, hey, if you want to heat up at any time, I think we'd all be okay with it. And then you just need some consistency from other guys. There aren't a lot of guys shooting them. Really, now that they've kind of limited some of the attempts, I mean, Notae and Likes are pretty high-volume guys. When Jackson Robinson is in there, he'll shoot them, but then after that, I mean, who is it? You know, I think Au'Diese Toney, as good as he is as a cutter, he's a guy who's been a pretty consistent, somewhat proven catch and shoot guy from the corner. He can help you there. Stanley Umude can help you there. Just 2 or 3 attempts a game if you can create good attempts. And then the big guys, that was one of the things that was really intriguing about this team is you have guys like Connor and Jalen Williams, who in theory can be pick and pop guys, stretch bigs, and that puts a lot of pressure on defenses if they have to take their center out of the lane and bring him onto the perimeter because they have to respect the opposing team's center as a shooter. That opens the floor for Notae, Likes, and everybody else to drive in there and get buckets around the rim. So you want those guys to take those shots. You want Connor to take those shots, but you need him to be better than 1 of 11 or 1 of 12 or whatever he is right now. So it's a concern. You know, it really is. They're getting good looks, and they're not falling right now. Hopefully, it starts trending in a little bit better direction. But again, it is nitpicking, right? Because Arkansas is 9-0 at this point. There are very few teams that can say that. And, you know, we talk about the schedule and everything, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute. I want to talk about those net rankings, but first, I think you're set up now this weekend for an intriguing and really important game. You know, it's kind of interesting. In Musselman's first year, Arkansas started 8-0, and then they lost at Western Kentucky. Last year, they started 9-0, and then they lost to Missouri. Well, they're 9-0 now. So if you want to keep one up in yourself, and Arkansas's got to go and win probably its biggest test of the year so far against a better than expected Oklahoma team that's at the BOK Center in Tulsa. That would get them to that 10-0 mark. I guess by that logic, though, if the pattern holds and Arkansas beats Oklahoma and gets to 10-0, then they would need to lose the next weekend to Hofstra, right? We don't necessarily want that to happen. Maybe they should just break the trend now that I think about it. Whatever. Anyway, the Sooners, hey, this is an interesting game, not just because of what's going on the court. I mean, there's some storylines here. Everybody remembers David Patrick, a personal friend of mine. He came over from UC Riverside. He was the associate head coach for Arkansas last year. If you remember, he stepped in when Muss was in the COVID protocols as the interim, led Arkansas to a win over Abilene Christian right before Christmas, which became a big win. I mean, Abilene Christian won an NCAA tournament game. So that was a big one. David Patrick, he dipped out in the offseason, went and joined Porter Moser, who's over at Oklahoma now. Not only that, Arkansas had one of the top-ranked junior college power forwards in Nicole Mawine. He was signed with Arkansas, backed out, followed David Patrick to Norman. It seems kind of shady or whatever on the surface, but he committed to Patrick more than he did Arkansas. Those guys had a long-standing relationship. It was a mutual release out of that letter of intent. It's still interesting, though. Marvin Johnson. I know you guys remember that name because you asked me about him probably 1,000 times in the spring. This is a guy who was essentially a silent commit to Arkansas out of the transfer portal. The Hogs wound up filling some other needs. He wound up going to Oklahoma. The only thing that kind of stinks about it, because it is some cool storylines, there's some intrigue there, but neither Marvin or Cole at this point are playing much, a few minutes a game. Hopefully we see him on Saturday. But, at any rate, this kind of felt like it might be a bridge year for Oklahoma. It's the first season under Porter Moser. You remember him. That's the coach that killed it at Loyola Chicago, all those Cinderella runs. Shout out Sister Jean, right? They did some pretty good work, though, when Moser came over to Oklahoma in the portal. And they've gotten off to a pretty solid start to the season. They were receiving votes in the top 25. I was kind of hoping they'd get ranked before they met Arkansas, but they were just receiving votes. They were actually ranked ahead of Arkansas in the initial net rankings that we're going to talk about in a second. But that's actually changed since they were released. Arkansas is ahead of them a little bit now. But they took a neutral site loss to Utah State. That's nothing to be ashamed of. Won 7 of their first 8. Notched a pretty impressive win over Florida. Doesn't look quite as good now after Florida got spanked by 0-7 Texas Southern the other day, which I just don't know how that happened. Guys, something like that happened to Arkansas, I would literally take a vacation day to avoid social media and the message boards. It would be an absolute mess. But Oklahoma did play. They played Butler actually at home last night. They lost that game 66-62 in overtime. It was a good game. We were in the press conference waiting on Muss afterwards, and that game was just hitting overtime, so we kind of had an eye on that. And Muss came in. We're talking to him, looking back down at the score. So it was interesting. I wish Oklahoma would have won because that actually dropped them from number 38 to number 53 in the net, which is significant because that moves it from a quad 1 to a quad 2 game. I'll explain that in a minute. It's fluid, though. It's something that can change over the course of the year. Still a big opportunity for Arkansas. The first thing that stands out to me in this matchup is it's kind of the battle between the hybrid big men. And Jalen Williams, we know all about him, versus Oklahoma's Tanner Groves. And if that name is familiar to you, Groves is a 6'10 kid from Eastern Washington that went nuts against Kansas last year. He gave him 30. He's a really nice player. He's averaging 15 and 6, really high field goal percentage. He can stretch the floor a little bit from 3. I don't know that Connor can guard him. That's not really an ideal matchup at all. I think this is a Jay Will assignment. From there, a little undersized Oklahoma is, but talented. They got a Duke transfer named Jordan Goldwire. He kind of mans the point guard position, kind of a combo guard. He's solid, 10 points, 4 assists per game. He's about 6'3", could be a good matchup for JD. They have a really good combo guard in Emoja Gibson. If you remember that name, we've seen him before. He's a really good player for North Texas before transferring over to Oklahoma. Definitely their best three-point shooter, most high-volume guy. I could see Devo or JD spending a lot of time on him. Elijah Harkless on the wing, 6'3". So all three of those guards are 6'3", 6'1", 6'1". So a little smaller, kind of like Arkansas is, honestly, if they're playing likes with Note. So the matchups work there. Harkless is more of an off-the-bounce guy. Any guard who wears number 55 bothers me. I don't know why I'm that way, but it's just always been weird to me. It's a center's number. Let the big men have the big numbers. Come on. Probably a good matchup for Aldis, that guy. Jalen Hill's their 4-man, 6'6", 220. So not a big power forward. So if Arkansas wants to go small and use Tony at the 4 or Stanley Amude, should be able to do that okay. So, Oklahoma pretty balanced offensively, pretty good field goal percentage, above average, I think, from 3. They rebound it pretty well. A little offensively challenged. They're okay. Top 75-ish on KenPom. They've been really solid on the defensive end for the most part, holding opponents to about 60 points. They held Butler to 66 in an overtime game. They just couldn't score. So I think I'm pretty sure they're top 30 or close to it in defensive efficiency. So they'll challenge Arkansas's offense. I do think Arkansas is going to be the best team Oklahoma has played. I'm not sure if Oklahoma is going to be the best team Arkansas has played. It's going to be close. I thought Cincinnati was really good. But it's definitely going to be a good test for the Razorbacks. And, some of the early projections for this game, it sounds like it's going to be a dogfight. KenPom has Arkansas winning 73-70. Torvik actually has Oklahoma winning 71-70. Shot quality has it as a virtual tie. ESPN's BPI has Oklahoma favored by 2.1 points. So, should be a good one. Good opportunity to boost that non-conference resume. It's a good neutral site. Musk said last night it's an hour 45 from Fayetteville. It's an hour 45 from Norman. Let's see which fan base shows up better. That's a challenge to you, Razorback fans. Get to Tulsa. Should be a cool atmosphere. The neutral site thing, I really enjoyed it in Kansas City, especially that first night. Kansas State's pretty close, and it was a fairly even crowd. I thought both sides were rowdy. That was fun. It gives you that tournament atmosphere. That's what you want. That's why you play these games. Like I mentioned, it is a quad 2 opportunity for Arkansas right now, with the potential to improve as the year goes along, which that kind of leads me into the last thing I want to talk about, which is those net rankings that were released on Monday. And just for a reminder on how that works and why it's important, the net kind of replaced the RPI as the top tool that's used by the NCAA tournament committee for selection and seeding. So it's a big deal. It uses game results, the opponents you play, the location, all these different factors to kind of create a rankings formula. And then games are broken down into 4 different quadrants. So a quad 1 is the highest profile game. Like when Arkansas travels to Alabama, that's a big time game. That's going to be a quad 1, right? Based on where they're ranked in the net. Quad 2, pretty good game. Quad 3, not so much. Quad 4 are kind of the stinkers, right? So you want more Q1s and 2s than you do 3s and 4s. I would say take it with a grain of salt right now. It's a predictive, but everything's still fluid with this. It adjusts. So just because Oklahoma is going to be a quad 2 game for Arkansas on Saturday doesn't mean that's going to be the case in March. If Oklahoma plays well, they move up in those net rankings, and that's going to adjust, right? And I think that's really important. You think about last year, when Arkansas played at the time, Oral Roberts and North Texas and Abilene Christian, everybody's just kind of like, shoulder shrug, whatever. But at the end of the year, when those teams had won their league and jumped up that net ranking, that really boosts Arkansas's resume. So maybe you'll see some of that, this year. And then also, you got to consider, and we'll talk about Arkansas's issues with these net rankings here in just a sec, but that strength of schedule is going to spike come SEC play. Like there's going to be a natural uptick in the level of competition that you're playing, and that's going to help that net ranking, assuming, you don't bottom out and lose a bunch of games, right? But the Hogs did come in lower in the debut than they did at any point last year. I think Arkansas, I want to say they debuted at 23 or 24 last year, and they only went up from there. They debuted at 44 this time around. They've actually moved up to 38 since Monday. Why is that the case? I mean, quite honestly, the home slate for the Hogs has drug them down so far. All 7 home games have been quad fours. That ain't great. Only East Carolina has played more quad four opponents. They played 8. Arkansas has played 7. So, for those seeking validation that, the schedule's been pretty soft early on, and there you go. The beauty is, like I said, these things can fluctuate. These games can look a lot better and be more beneficial for the resume in March than they are right now. If you think big picture, for example, to move up to a quad 3 for these home games, then whoever Arkansas has played just has to move into the top 160 of the rankings. So if you look at Gardner-Webb, they're at number 161 right now. So they could win one game and move up. All of a sudden, that's a quad 3 instead of a 4. Mercer, they beat Coastal Carolina or somebody the other day, and they jumped 45 spots, and they're at number 164 now. So it's very fluid, and when you have a small sample size, big jumps can happen. So, I think some of that's going to even out, but that's what's dragging them down right now. It's just those quad 4 games are getting them. And then again, remember, this is an evaluation tool for seeding. So, when Joe Lunardi drops the Hogs from a 3 seed to a 6 seed the other day, and people get upset about it, well, what you have to remember, he is trying to predict what the selection committee would do if they were to release a bracket at that point. And so when you have that huge data point, like the net rankings come out and it has Arkansas slid back, then naturally he's going to slide them back as well. But at the end of the day, all they have to do is keep stacking wins, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if you look at the front half of the SEC schedule, and the SEC is tough this year, I think, and we'll see if I'm right, I think it's pretty top-heavy in terms of top half. I think the top 7 or 8 teams are really, really good and might beat up on each other. But I also think there's 5 or 6 teams at the bottom of the league that are really going to struggle. And Arkansas gets a lot of them early in the conference slate in January. So, and then things really, on the flip side of that, is things really pick up in February and you've got a brutal stretch to end the year. But Arkansas just continues to handle their business, continue to make improvements, start knocking down some shots. It's feasible. And honestly, they probably should get to a point where they're 20-2 or 19-3 head into the final stretch. And I know that sounds like, well, that's a pretty bold prediction. That's a great record. But look at the schedule. They're going to be favored in a majority of those games. So if they're able to do that, they're going to be sitting really pretty when we're talking about, the AP poll and the net rankings and bracketology and all that. When they then have an opportunity down the stretch to really pad that resume, you're going to have all these quad 1 games. Losing them, you might take a little bump, but it's not going to hurt you. Winning them is going to give you a big boost. So I think it sets up pretty nicely. We know, historically, Musselman's teams have played a lot better towards the end of the year than they do at the beginning. They improve as the season goes along. He figures them out. And if that's going to be the case this year, I think they're going to be in a really good spot. We'll see. All right. Looks like we got a few questions and comments. Let me see if I can pull those up real quick. There we go. MP Rich says, woo pig suey from SoCal. I'm jealous. Honestly, Arkansas has avoided a lot of the crazy super cold weather so far. Knock on wood. There's been a few days there, but it's actually been pretty nice so far. I like it. I remember last year, I can't remember if it was, I guess it was after Christmas, it was January or February, we had just that crazy period where it was nearly a foot of snow. It was like 9 or 10 inches of snow, and for a few days it was like -10 outside, like we're in Canada or something. I moved south from St. Louis to get away from that, so I could do without that for sure. Michelle Rava says 9-0 is outstanding. I agree. There are 12 undefeated teams left in the country. Arkansas is still one of them. And when you get to this point in the season, you can say that. That's impressive. It doesn't matter who you've played. And I get it. We just talked about those quad 4 games, and that's not the sexiest schedule in the world. But they've won every one of those games by double digits, whether it's been pretty or not. And then they went and tested themselves on a neutral site, and they won both of those games on nights where they didn't shoot worth a darn. They found other ways to win against quality competition. So that does give you, I think, a little bit more optimism that even if they have those nights in SEC play where they are struggling to knock down 3-pointers, that they can still find ways to, dig their heels in and win on defense or win on the backboard. So could the resume be a little bit better so far? Sure. But are there a lot of encouraging things and signs based on what they've done? Yeah, I think so. Brian Webb says, anybody know if you need negative COVID test or proof for the Little Rock game at Simmons? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. That hasn't been a thing at Fayetteville. I think they've required a mask to get in to the arena. I don't know that it's necessarily been enforced once you're in there, but I'm not sure what the protocols are at Little Rock. We'll probably have another show between now and then, and I bet I'll get some information, some media information, and if I hear anything about that, I'll let you know next week. Gary Dimmitt says, overall we look good, but we'll have to shoot the 3 better to beat really good teams. Who can we count on to consistently hit them? And that's the thing. It's one thing to say that a team is just slumping from 3 and they're going to figure it out, and then it's another to look at it and go, who's going to do this? Like, who's the guy going to be that's going to really step up? And here's the thing. I think that you're going to wind up having better production from J.D. Notae and Chris Likes from 3. But make no mistake, those 2 guys are very streaky. So there will be nights, maybe like we saw against Northern Iowa, where Arkansas freaks out and knocks down 10 or 12 threes, and those guys combine for 7 or 8 of them. There are also going to be nights like we've seen lately where they're cold. And when that happens, the question is, who steps up and knocks them down from there? And if you look at the rotation, there's not a lot of high-volume guys out there. Like I said, Tony is a guy, he's over the last couple of years, he's made about a little over 1 per game. Stanley Umude is the same way. So you'll probably get some here and there from them, but they're not necessarily going to be high-volume guys. Trying to think my way through the rotation here. Devo, you like Devo getting to the rim, shooting that mid-range. I don't care if he ever shoots another 3. Personally, I think the 3s look better when he's got his feet set and he's not pulling up off the dribble. He's taken some ill-advised ones, not lately, but earlier on. And you'll get a handful more from him, but it's not going to be anything crazy or consistent. You think about the bigs. We talked about Connor, the way he's struggled out there. You would like to think he'd get it going. We've seen him rattle off a bunch of 3s in a row, but it's been a while. And like I said, I think he's 1 of 11 or 1 of 12 so far. Got to have an uptick there. Jalen Williams, I think, is a guy that could provide you a little boost. But again, he's not going to go out there and attempt 5 a game. So I don't know where the volume comes from. And you look down the rotation, and really the only 2 guys I see that could really give you an uptick there are the Robinsons, Jackson and KK. Jackson's gotten some looks, and so far he hasn't cashed in. And like I said earlier, at some point we need to stop talking about shots looking good and, man, it looks pretty and I think it's going to fall, and I need to start falling. And I think he's got it in him, obviously, to be a really good shooter. I mean, it's such a fluid release. Talking about Jackson, got to make them when you have the opportunities. And the more games go along, if he's going, 0 of 3 or 1 of 5, he can do a lot of other things pretty well, but his number has been called to come in there and fix what's ailing this team. And if he's not doing that, then those minutes are going to continue to decrease. So he's got to take advantage of those opportunities. He's going to have to go off one night and go 3 of 4 or 4 of 6. And he's got it in him. We need to see it. I think that could be a guy that could get you some volume. And then KK, he's got to come with some more confidence. Like we talked about it earlier. He's going to have to, I think, produce in short spurts because that's what he's getting right now, and force Musselman's hand to give him a second rotation. Force him to put KK in the game in the first half. Do your job. Knock down a shot. Don't foul a three-point shooter. Play your role. Do a good enough job to where in the second half, when he looks down on that bench for somebody to come in for Devo when he picks up a third or fourth foul, and he looks to you and says, all right, let's give you another shot. And then you take advantage of that. Because I'm sure he's playing well in practice, enough to get opportunities at all, but you got to start stringing together the good performances. I think he's a guy that could help you from 3 when he's confident. I really like the way he stepped into that one last night off the handoff. But that's it, in my opinion. So I think that this team will wind up shooting a better percentage than it is right now. 28, that's ridiculous. I think they can get to the 30 to maybe 33% range. I know it's not great, but it's an uptick. But I don't see a lot of consistent volume. You get Note and Likes hot, they can rattle off 10 on a night. But for the most part, I think we're probably looking at that 5 to 8 range. Bobby Brown Jr. says, what's the deal with KK? Yeah, I think we've covered it. I think that he was maybe pressing a little bit, overthinking a little bit. He's probably looking at the depth chart going, man, I've got to take minutes from either Devo or JD or Chris Likes, and those are 3 really good, really talented and experienced players, proven guys. And so it's kind of a hard rotation to crack. I think he's just got to go out there and play his role and, again, take advantage of the opportunities that he has. There could be ways to carve out, a role for him in more consistent minutes. But he's going to have to really show it, and he's going to have to beat out, I think, probably a guy like a Jackson Robinson, or maybe just make it to where, the trickle-down effect where Trey Wade or Kamani just aren't really factored in, because you can only play so many guys, and we know Muss is going to go probably about 7 deep. That the 8th guy or the 9th guy, he'll play him, but it's not going to be that consistent. And in those tight games and SEC play, tournament play, he's 6 or 7 deep. And right now, you're seeing a pretty clear 7-man rotation, and he's just trying to figure out who the next guy is. So KK needs to be that guy if he wants to get the opportunities. Isaac Riley said, missed some of the show, but glad I could hop on for a while. Woo Pig Suey, keep up the amazing content. Curtis, I appreciate that. You can always go back and listen. It'll be on the YouTube channel, the Hog Hoops Live YouTube channel. Be uploaded on the podcast here shortly. Ryan Horn says, we have to get better, but I believe in this coaching staff. Any news on Anthony Black? No real news on Anthony Black. I think it's probably just going to take some time with him. Again, I think, right now we're looking at probably an Oklahoma State lean. I think I said last week, though, if I was Arkansas, I would continue to kick the tires with him. Arkansas is heavily recruiting one of his teammates, Ron Holland, over there at Duncanville. And if you're going to be a presence at Duncanville, you might as well keep recruiting Anthony Black, because the early signing period is past. He hasn't announced a commitment. And he could at any point, but he can't sign until, April? So an opportunity, if you're still interested, to continue to build a relationship, because you never know what's going to happen elsewhere. Just because he's trending towards Oklahoma State right now, and if I had to place a prediction, I'd say that's where he's going to wind up. But remember, they're on probation that with the NCAA tournament ban, and it wouldn't impact him the following year. But how's that team going to respond throughout the course of the year when they don't really have anything to play for? Do things go south? They have a bunch of transfers. I'm not saying they will, but you never know. And if things go south there and he decides to look at other options, if you've been a presence, then maybe you're in a good spot at that point. So, no real news, and I think probably still OSU, but if I was Arkansas, I'd stay on him. Andrew Sawyer says, what do you think about Stanley? I love him. I think he's underachieving right now. Super gifted. I mean, he's a guy that elevates and can really create his own shot. I think he's really good from kind of that 15-foot radius and in. And I think he can stretch it out and be a pick and pop guy for you. I like his 3-point shot when he's got his feet set, when he's got open looks. He's got some work to do defensively, something I've noticed a little bit more lately, guarding the perimeter. But he's got the ability to be a guy that can score for you in double figures consistently, but he's got to do it and still settling in. And it's kind of been a challenge for him because he's been playing the 3, the 4, and the 5 at different times. So I don't think he's really settled into a role because it continues to change based on who else is in there with him. But it's just been really up and down. He broke out. I think he had 19 one game, well up into the teens the next game, and then was down to 9 the other day, held scoreless last night. He'll play 30 minutes one game, played 10 the other night. So I think he's just trying to find his way and find consistency. And Arkansas needs him. I think if they're going to reach their potential this year, they need Stanley Umude to be good and consistent. Kevin Mercer says, KK and Jackson Robinson are going to be big for the Hogs in SEC play. Both shoot the 3 ball well. Yeah, we talked about that. I hope so. I hope that they can prove themselves enough to carve out enough of a role to make enough of an impact from 3 for this team to kind of solve some of that issue. MP Rich says, it's just me, or is Vanover moving up and down the court much smoother than last year? He really is. He really is. Vanover is a better player overall than he was last year. There's no doubt in my mind. I think he's healthier. He's carrying better weight. He is moving better up and down the floor. I think his stamina and endurance and strength are better. He's really been, I think, pretty good at being assertive around the rim, a little bit more aggressive even when he's not finishing. He's been doing a good job of getting to the foul line more. We saw some of those block shots last night, which he really wasn't blocking a ton before, but maybe he's getting a little bit of that timing back. You'd like to see him rebound better. You don't want your 7-3 guy in there. Even if he's only playing 8 to 10 minutes, you got to get more than 1 rebound. So a little bit more aggressive there would be nice. And make 3, big man. You're a unicorn. And that's the reason why everybody was so excited when he initially signed. If you remember that first red-white game that he played in, is before he became eligible, but he could play in that. He was out there stroking it. And, we've seen him in practices and even in games really knock down those threes. And I like that he's, taking the unique length that he has in the paint more. But, man, you'd really like him to start knocking down those threes too, because he could solve a lot of those issues as well if he gets it going. Aaron Anderson says, if we struggle from the perimeter in SEC play, we might have a tough time. Have to get our percentage up, more preferably around 33%. Yeah, the higher the better. I agree with that. The higher the better. We talked about why. It's going to be a lot more difficult. And again, not saying Arkansas can't make their living and win a bunch of games in SEC play by attacking the rim, the offensive glass, second chance points, and all that. But it's a different level of athlete and physicality in the SEC, so it's going to be more of a challenge. And you really don't want teams to pack the paint and shrink the floor on you and get away with it. Luther Shaddy says, I really think Connor Vanover is going to be a really good player. Hopefully. It's matchup dependent with him. But if he's going to earn those starts, you'd like to see him be able to get more than the first rotation of each half. Maybe get a second one if he's producing well enough to where he's playing 12 to 15 minutes per game. I think more often than not Arkansas is going to win. Uh-oh. Lost my place there. There we go. Lee Rissner says, what happened to Note's 3 shooting? I don't know. Really, I mean, and he takes, the thing about Note is he's notorious for the heat check. So if he knocks one down, you can pretty much guarantee that he's going to pull one up on the next possession. He has not been good at those. He's really struggled pulling up off the dribble from 3, especially when he's coming off the ball screen. He'll just pull up and pop one. Those haven't been falling. He's a lot better catch and shoot. I think if his shot selection from 3 improves, and it's been a little bit better lately, that percentage is going to go up. But we also know that he's just a creator. He's a gunner. That's what he does. Over the course of his career, he hasn't been a ridiculously high percentage shooter, but he's been high volume and well over 30%. He's a lot better than he's shown so far. Got to get it going. Dustin Hoofman says, Musselman is great at making in-game adjustments and week to week. His players and teams usually get better and better throughout the year. Yeah, 100% true. We talked about that a little bit with how the schedule kind of lays out. You want to, learn your lessons in winning, which is what they're doing right now, and make improvements and take advantage of the good stretches of the schedule and be playing your best basketball at February when things really heat up. And Aaron Anderson says, Muss is the best coach I've seen at game planning and in-game adjustments. That alone helps us tremendously. It's true. He's going to identify the strengths of this team and maximize them. And he's going to identify the weaknesses and do everything he can to take them away. And it's the same thing, kind of the same mantra that he operates with the game plan from opponent to opponent. How can we take away the other team's best player? He usually has a pretty good idea. I thought they did a really nice job with what they did on Jameer Young last night. What does this team do very well? How can we take it away? Make them beat us in another way. He's very, very good at that very thing. So no real doubt in my mind that they're going to figure it out. All right. I think that about does it. That's all the questions and comments. That's good. Pretty good stopping point for the day, I think. Again, big one on Saturday. Arkansas is 9-0, looking to move to 10-0. You got Oklahoma, that neutral site at Tulsa. If you can get out there, I'm sure there are still tickets available. I go. I think it's going to be a really cool atmosphere. Believe that game's on ESPN2 if you're going to watch it on TV. 12:30, so kind of a unique start time, but 12:30 in the afternoon should be a good one. And then Arkansas is on a little bit of a bye next week, so I think it's finals week maybe. So they don't play again until the following Saturday. I'll probably still jump in sometime midweek next week, either Wednesday or Thursday. We'll see. Do another episode, maybe just kind of a recap episode of what we've seen through 10 games and see if we can really dive into what's going on with this team and maybe give a little bit more of an extended preview. So kind of more of an overview show maybe next week, unless something crazy happens with the Oklahoma game over the weekend. But hey, as always, appreciate you guys joining in. It's been Curtis Wilkerson with HawgSports, and we'll talk to you next time.